the shades of some deserted cloister, or the clammy realms of a sealed vault, where she could look beseechingly out through the rusted iron bars and win sympathy from bats and owls, while Fifth Street returned to normalcy.
On Main Street, there's the old house known as the Glasgow House. Writer Ellen Glasgow lived there. The story or legend connected with it has it the famed writer was working on a novel when her death came. And there are several Richmonders who will reluctantly reveal they've been in the old house and heard typing coming from an upstairs room. But upon investigation, they found nothing. Not many years ago, when a guest arrived for a visit, there's a report he saw an attractive lady standing on the landing of the stairs. Not thinking too much of it, other than that she may be another guest, he saw a portrait in another room of Ellen Glasgow. And he swore the lady on the landing wore the same dress and looked just like Ellen Glasgow.
In the far west end of the city, there's a fashionable neighborhood that's had its share of mystery and what one neighbor calls just plain bad luck. Several accidental deaths and at least one suicide have occurred in that area. And sitting among these homes is one which has special significance. It goes back to the turn of the century when an opera singer was the owner, and she disappeared. No one knew why. The house was given to a couple after standing vacant for a great length of time. And one day, while excavating for a garden in the backyard, the body of the opera singer was uncovered. Apparently, she had been murdered. Intrigued by the developments, a story was pieced together by the couple, which indicated the opera singer's maid had vanished about that same time. And had she, too, fallen victim to some fiendish killer? Had she killed the opera singer, hastily buried the body, and then fled? We cannot answer, for there is not enough information. We've been unable to link any of these stories to any old newspapers, even dating back to the late 1800s. And those who know, or indicate they may know, won't say. But the man who presently lives in the home says the old girl is still around. He says the house has often stayed empty for long periods of time, and that people who've rented it in the past have heard strange noises, and that unusual things have occurred. He says the spirit of the opera singer has been heard playing an organ in the upstairs room. Once, he says, police rushed the house, surrounding it, and they had supposedly received several phone calls from neighbors, but the neighbors had seen a woman in a luminous white gown walking in the backyard. The police found nothing, and the man said he saw or heard nothing. He says money has had a strange way of turning up in the house, and the opera singer was, according to his story, relatively well off, and apparently enjoys rewarding those who still maintain her home. The man living there now says in spite of the stories and the weird noises, he's comfortable there, like he belongs.
Richmond Revisited continues in a moment on WLEE.
Along the James, where many of the famed Virginians lived, we hear many a story that some are still with us. With us in spirit, anyway. The famed Westover ghost is known in legends throughout the Old Dominion, supposed to be the restless spirit of Evelyn Byrd, the lovely daughter of William Byrd, who was credited with the founding of Richmond. William took Evelyn to England in 1717 to be educated and presented at court. There she fell hopelessly in love with an unacceptable nobleman. Her father sternly forbade the match and brought her home. Evelyn made Westover her prison, rejecting all suitors. Evelyn Byrd died at the age of 29. Died of a broken heart. But before she died, she told her best friend Ann Harrison of Berkeley Plantation that she would return if she could. The families who lived at Westover insist Evelyn has indeed kept her word. Numerous are the accounts of her having appeared radiant and lovely. More as a person, less of a vision. One of the most vivid accounts of one seeing Evelyn Byrd is from a woman who lived at Westover at one time. She says as she walked down a path, she glanced backward, thinking she saw a friend and stopped to wait for her at the gate. When she came closer, the woman says that it was very apparent that it wasn't whom she thought. But she was entranced by the glow about the girl, by the raven black hair, the white dress. As she stood there thinking how beautiful the girl was, the apparition just seemed to sink slowly into the ground.
In Essex County sits an 18th century mansion known as Blandfield. It's been frequented by a variety of spirits for some 2 centuries. They've come as eerie lights in the night, wispy figures of men and women stalking through the halls. It hasn't been too many years ago when a house guest reported apparitions on 2 occasions. The first was in a long flowered dress, walking across an upstairs hall. But after everyone had searched the home, no stranger was to be found. 2 days later, just the glimpse of a woman in a hallway in a long skirt. She crossed a downstairs hall and entered a room. Again, an investigation revealed nothing. Then there's the account of another apparition at Blandfield. Several years ago, the wife of the owner at that time said she and 2 dogs were in the downstairs library one afternoon. The only other person in the house was a sick relative, asleep in an upstairs bedroom. Suddenly, heavy footsteps sounded in the room directly overhead. Startled, she listened. But the dogs sprang to their feet, hair bristling. She overcame an immediate reaction to grab a shotgun and investigate, deciding instead to leash the dogs and proceed in an orderly fashion. First, she checked the relative's bedroom. There, fast asleep, was the ill person. But the dogs continued to strain at the leash, pulling toward the room from which the noise had come, where the footsteps had been heard. The woman opened the door. The dogs bounded in fiercely, but soon quieted down. No one was there. But the woman is convinced. She heard one of the famed Blandfield ghosts.
Near Warsaw is the lovely estate of Sabine Hall, and its spirits seem particularly fond of weddings. Back in 1878, Mrs. Carter Welford, the bride, passed what she thought was a new servant woman on the stairway. She asked the cook about the stranger, and she was told, "Oh, that's a ghost who comes around quite often." Then, at another wedding about 25 years later, the stable boy posted at the gate to handle carriages was approached by a gentleman in colonial costume who demanded,